G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope you are super well. Today I want to talk about something that I hear in my comments fairly regularly, and that is people suggesting, can you please remove the video component of my mirrorless hybrid camera so that my camera can be cheaper? And in this video, I want to talk about why I think that's not going to happen anytime soon. We've got Sony, Fuji, and Nikon. These are all mirrorless units. And what makes them different? Why are they different to a mirrored camera? Well, I suppose it's all there in the original title, isn't it? And this is a mirrored camera. Mirrorless, mirrored, or otherwise known as a DSLR. Now that stands for Digital Single Lens Reflex. And the reflex part of it is this part here. That's a mirror moving up and down, and that mirror moves up so that the shutter can then expose the sensor. There are a lot of mechanical parts that make a camera like this work, and it's very different. Part of also the issue here is the mirror box. That whole unit takes up quite a lot of space. Space, weight, time, and cost. Even so, video was possible. What it required was this here. We go into live view mode and the mirror would be locked up, and now we're shooting video. That's how live view works. And that's fine. It worked to a certain extent. But the technology in these cameras and how they do business, well, it's different. And it partly was done with the DSLR, Nikon experimenting in this space with the Nikon D780, which was kind of a D750 Z6 hybrid. And I think probably the biggest difference with the D780 was that it had more focusing capabilities actually built into the sensor, whereas DSLRs traditionally, they had a separate focus unit which was off sensor. In a lot of cases actually sat down here below, and it had nothing to do with the sensor at all. What mirrorless has meant is we have cameras like these, and these are all the same in the respect of there is no mirror anymore. And as we can see right here, there's the sensor. It's right there. It's not hidden behind a mirror. And there is a shutter with this camera. And there you go. You can still see the shutter. It exists, and it's simply for the purpose of photography. Now, with most digital cameras, their sensor, the speed that the sensor scans at is relatively slow, relative to photography, slow. So a mechanical shutter is still required. But we are now seeing, with the advent of cameras like the Z9, which we are shooting on today, sensor scan speeds are getting so fast, there is no mechanical shutter anymore. This is first gen technology. And as we know with technology, it will only get faster. And I suspect it won't be too long before we have literally a global electronic shutter in our everyday cameras. They already exist in cine cameras, and I'm sure they will come to our hybrid mirrorless cameras soon enough. For example, perhaps that's what Canon is working on with the Canon R1. Who knows? But I am confident that that technology is not too far away. Ultimately, what that means is that everything related to the concept of shutters and mirrors moving out of the way so that the camera can see through the lens as opposed to us seeing through the lens, all of that stuff is now finally being moved on. None of it's required anymore. That's super interesting to me. And ultimately, where are we up to? Well, as I said at the opening, these cameras are essentially video cameras. When we go into video camera mode, let's flip it over, or in stills mode on a Z9, this is what it looks like. There's no shutter. Doesn't matter whether you're in video or stills, there's no shutter. We could be taking a shot silently, we could be shooting video silently, okay? Nothing mechanical is happening, nothing is going on. That is the full product right there. It's all done electronically. So essentially, this is a video camera, and we've had domestic level video cameras like your VHS Handycam that you used to throw over your shoulder, a sensor always there, and a lens on the front. These are video cameras. And it's interesting, I made a video about 3 years ago saying that the technologies would converge. Thus, when commenters say, remove the video features from my camera, I just want it to be a stills camera and I want it to be cheaper. Well, in the case of a Z30, this is just a very middle of the road sort of camera. It shoots relatively slowly and it's also a middle of the road video camera. But we do get 4K. This tiny little box, I mean, look at this here. It's not even an inch thick. I would say it's just shy of an inch, maybe 2 centimeters thick here. It still gives you a 4K, 24, 25, or 30 frames per second image, and it will do it for almost up to an hour. It's extraordinarily small, it's extraordinarily affordable, and this camera, even in this country, is $1,000. In US dollars, it's something like $600 US. So if you said to me, I would like this camera, the Z30, I'd like it to be cheaper than it currently is because I want you to remove the video features. And I would say to you, well, so maybe if you removed the button, the microphones, the tally light, and the socket, it might save you $20 in manufacturing, maybe a slightly smaller heatsink. I don't think it's going to change the manufacturing cost of this very much, which is probably a pretty small number once the R&D is all complete. And at the end of the day, ultimately, products are sold for what we will buy them for, not for what they cost to produce. That's how it works. So I don't think removing $5, $10, $20 from this unit with just a few buttons and so on is worth removing video from it completely. And here's the second issue. Not everybody feels this way. Not everybody wants to see video removed. Ultimately, that creates a need for 2 different versions of the Z30, or the Z30 and the Z30P for photography only. And I just simply can't see manufacturers making 2 versions of the same product just in order to save, I don't know, let's say $50 at retail in order to remove video from it. I just don't think there's enough realistic demand. As prices get higher and video features get better and more complicated, sure, maybe that number increases. Maybe there's a $100 difference or a $200 difference. But again, based on what it costs to actually manufacture these devices, once R&D is complete, actual raw products and assembly cost, I don't think it's going to make a very big difference. We have here the X-H2s. Now this is the first camera, to the best of my understanding, to have an APS-C stacked sensor in it. Now they've put this sensor in here to make it a fantastic stills camera, so it can do action, so it can do high frame rate photography. But this also assists with video. Any improvement in this sensor for stills benefits video as well. And again, the only conversation you might have really is around a record button. This also has a tally light. It's also got an HDMI port. But, you know, even the HDMI port can be used for stills as well. So I'd probably leave that there. Maybe you could use a cheaper HDMI port, like as in this one, but you still might want to have a feed out, or you still might want to go home and plug it into your TV and watch the images that you've produced. So I don't see the HDMI ports needing to be removed. I think that's fine. With all of the technology that's here in place to make these fantastic stills cameras and the extra cost to include the video component of it is minimal. Now you could say, oh, well, I don't want manufacturers to have video at all because they've got to spend money on research and development. Well, I can tell you, having recently read articles from DP Review from all of the major manufacturers, they've interviewed everybody, again, RIP, DP Review. All manufacturers are talking about the need to have more and more video capabilities. Even so, some people might not want them. The major manufacturers know and feel a need to continue to have them and improve them. So there's always going to be research and development. The research and development is done, and ultimately it just comes down to what's the actual cost. What's the actual cost of adding that button? What's the actual cost of having a telly light, a record jack, an audio jack, and maybe some extra heat dissipation? I think they're the main things, because I did talk about batteries in a recent video, but the reality is none of these companies have changed their batteries at all. They haven't changed them to suit video. It just means they don't last as long. My Z9, if I'm shooting stills, it will shoot all day long stills. But if I'm shooting 8K video, well, I get 2 or 3 hours or whatever it is. It's different, and we just accept that. They're not suddenly adding a battery that's 5 times the size, making the camera 5 times bigger. The manufacturers still understand that these cameras have to fit within the photography paradigm, and so thus batteries are not being changed. Batteries are being advanced, but that's simply because they're trying to give us longer shoot times for stills. We want that, and that happens to benefit video as well. The bottom line is, the technology that is going into mirrorless cameras to make them even better mirrorless stills cameras, like the X-H2s, which is a superb, extremely fast stack sensor camera that does all the cool stuff. It does a lot of cool stuff that the Z9 does, and it does some other cool stuff of its own. Well, that benefits photography. It happens to benefit video as well. I don't believe we will ever see any of the major manufacturers, Canon, Sony, Nikon, Panasonic, Fuji, I don't think we'll see any of them remove video as an add-on, as a side feature, or even as a kind of main feature. And we can see with Sony, of course, they're just releasing more and more cameras in this vlogging space, with the ZV-E1 being the latest example. It has a tremendously powerful 4K sensor in it, and then it's got a whole lot of other electronic wizardry, which I still think is in version 1, and we will talk about that camera in another video. Video's here to stay. Now, of course, we do have outliers like Leica, Hasselblad, Sigma, Phase 1. These sort of manufacturers, they are making cameras. In some cases, because Hasselblad, I think at one stage were going to put video or did have video in some of their stills cameras. Leica, of course, for example, in the M series, the M11, no video. But that's a very specific market. And Sigma have talked about the fact that the video features in their couple of cameras that they've made, they've actually talked about the fact that they need to increase and improve the video features because they understand this as well. If you want to buy into any of those mass market systems, which is the majority of us, I would say that 5 big brands that we talked about, and then you add in OM and you add in Sigma, all of these companies are going to continue to have video as an option. It's just simply such a small differential to add those buttons and ports. And the majority of the market wants it, and thus economies of scale will just always continue to see that there. And I suppose, looking at the M11, which does not have video in it, I'd be surprised to see if Leica, in that range of their cameras, puts video moving forward. That's simply not the space that Leica are in. It's just simply like saying some Porsche cars that you buy doesn't have a back seat for the kids. That's not what that Porsche is about. It doesn't need to have a backseat for the kids. They're not the people who want it or buy it, and they pay a premium to not have a backseat. Well, the Leica M11, you pay a premium not to have video, and that's the way that it is. I think this is a really super interesting subject, but at the end of the day, all of these cameras, all of these hybrid cameras, these are all video cameras that have been created to be able to do stills as well. It's really interesting to me that we've had this convergence. Again, as I said, I talked about it in a video a few years ago, and it's here. And the Z9 is absolutely the pinnacle of it, having removed the mechanical shutter. And it is the pinnacle today, but it's actually just the beginning. And I'm confident that an R1, an A1, 2, and more cameras beyond. And one other part that's awesome about that direction, which is not specifically related to video, is that of course you're removing all of the moving parts. The Z9 has a shutter, but it's a very low performance shutter simply to protect the sensor. And I think that's absolutely fabulous. It doesn't have to move at 15 frames a second, but it is a low performance shutter. And you can see by its design and its construction, it's just simply not for photography. I think this culmination of video camera and stills camera together is the right way forward. It makes cameras cheaper to produce and it makes them have less moving parts, which means they will have to be repaired less and they will last longer. Let's hope that that does bear out moving forwards. All right, I would love to know your thoughts on all of this. I love this nerdy stuff. I think it's super cool. I love trying to understand what's going on, where it's all heading. So please do let me know in the comments below what you think about the fact that your mirrorless hybrid camera is essentially a video camera a little bit Frankenstein. All right, it's been so good to see you. If this is your first time here, I would love to see you again. So please do subscribe, please share, and please like. I will see you very soon. Bye for now.